Hello, everyone. Welcome to our April development update for Ashes of Creation. We hope that everyone has been having a magnificent month, and we hope that you're excited. Spring is in the air.
I know. I can't
Yeah,
believe spring has come.
aka allergies.
Soon to be summer too.
I know it's been wild. I think we say this every single month. We're like, you blink and a month has gone by, but I feel like an entire half a year has almost happened, and I'm like, how?
Well, these are I mean, to be fair, these streams are very much like touch points, or excuse me, they're kind of like where I put my head back up and I say, oh, a month has gone by, because each of the weeks you're just kind of in the thick of it and you don't really realize the passage of time, except for these kind of staple dates where we talk with the community and we have, we know it's monthly, so we're like, oh, okay, wait, a month has gone by. you
It's a
know
moment of reflection, and you're always like, wow. I don't know if anyone ever takes a moment of reflection, but when you stop for a moment, you're like, what have I done? Oh, that's a lot of things.
oh
But
yeah.
for those of you who are new here, I'm just going to quickly go over what you'll be seeing today, and you can probably see it below. We are going to be going over our quick reminders, our mage update, our art update, studio update, and then questions and answers from our forums that we always pull before. So Vacner has gone through them all, and he also answers all of them for you if you didn't get your question answered here. A lot of questions are repeat questions, so he goes through and answers them. And then he also, if your question didn't get answered, you can always ask it again in the future if it's one that we have not asked before. But obviously, I'm Margaret Crone. I'm your Director of Communications, and with me, as always, is Stephen Sharif, our Creative Director. And before we get things started, we'll quickly go over our YouTube comment that was selected. So we'll toss that over. Today's one is from Tima200, and they want to know people camping open world dungeon areas was a huge problem in ESO. Please, Intrepid, prevent this. And I don't know, Stephen, if you have thoughts on how that is going to work out.
Hmm. That is a good question. People camping open world dungeon areas. Well, part of Ashes of Creation that's a very important aspect is that there is a competitive nature to the environments, the open world. We're a non-faction based game where your reputation matters and the relationships that you build matter, and those relationships can be competitive, they can be adversarial, they can be cooperative and friendly. And camping really is a mechanism in which players are spending time at a certain location in order to either continue control over that location, or to prevent others from having access. And so one of the ways that we kind of allow certain systems to interact with that idea of camping is you have opportunities to initiate things like guild wars where you can engage with those individuals. You can participate in the flagging system where you can attempt to remove those individuals. There are opportunities for player friction to occur if people are doing things that are not received well by the community or by your group of players or by others. And this is an opportunity to engage in the political aspect of the game. And the politics in an open world, sandbox oriented type of game design is really the lifeblood of what keeps many players, interested and invested in the outcome of those types of political situations. So I would say that it's not necessarily a bad thing when some group of players might try to extend or exert their type of influence to have control over locations. That's an opportunity for player political engagement to occur. And sometimes there are, in our past experiences of playing MMOs, maybe an imbalance that can happen between some groups that either grow too large or consolidate too much power, and it's difficult for the server to push back against those individuals. I would say in the designs of Ashes of Creation, we've created a lot of opportunity for smaller groups to affect change in the world, and changes that can be negatively affecting of larger groups. groups, right? We have anti-Zerg mechanics when it comes to traveling across the world and being able to be at any singular location in any, given point of time, or quickly by fast teleportation we don't have access to, right? That's one example. But also there are open world objectives that can occur through things like guild wars and node wars. There are also your home base of operations, which are nodes that can be adversely affected should players do something that are against their reputation. These are the types of interactions we want to occur. And those points of friction are opportunities for players to get engaged. So, I would say it's difficult in an open world environment and a non-faction based game to kind of prevent players from loitering in a particular dungeon or area to try to exert that control, but there are a lot of opportunities system wise for players to push back against it.
All right. And, if you want your comment spotlighted, whenever we have our next dev update, which is going to be the April one here, you can head on over to our YouTube and make sure that you subscribe to us. And you'll have to flag it so that we can see that. Because if you don't have it public, then we can't tell that you're subscribed. And then also leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and we will select at random a person. So yeah, we're excited to see more of those things. And with that, I will going to quickly go through some of the other updates that we've had. So first and foremost, we've got our dev discussion that we just put out this month. So we hope that you have been enjoying that. We've also had an office hours for it, which if you don't know what that is, Vaknar and Roshan have been amazing in doing these calls with folks, and you can pop on and give your feedback in more of a kind of chat setting versus in a forum setting. It's a little different. I don't think I've seen a ton of people doing stuff like that, but it's really cool, and hopefully you enjoy it. But this was on average, how long do you prefer a dungeon playthrough to take? And our next one will be on the Mage Archetype. So we love your feedback. We do. So keep tossing it our way. And of course, if you didn't catch it, Stephen did a community Q&A with Chibi Bree from the Golden Feather, Richie SH, and Simurg from Ash's Pathfinder. If you want to check that out, it's over on our YouTube channel. So we hope that you like that and get some of your questions answered from the community. And of course, we do have our cosmetic swap over that will be happening on May 10th at 11 a.m. Pacific. So if you'd like to snag these, you can do so now. If you're not aware, these are all things that are going to be NPCs, creatures, building things like that in our game. So you're really helping us build the world as we are creating it. And of course, a reminder that we do have a content creator program that is still taking applications. This is currently in application phase, and we will be kind of closing that as we get closer to the invitation phase, which will be closer to Alpha 2. So as you start seeing that happening, you might get some inklings in your bones of what's to come. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to Steve to talk a little bit about the Mage update before we showcase it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as promised, and I know we've been getting a little bit ahead kind of in what our future updates, monthly updates will include. You guys been looking forward to the Alpha 2 Mage update for the last month. I know we talked about that last month. This is an opportunity for you guys to see the direction that we've taken on some of these abilities. On the class kit for the mage, you're not going to see all of the abilities, obviously, but you're going to see 9 or 10 abilities that relate to, utility spells, some mobility spells, some mainly DPS spells, and as it relates to kind of affecting status conditions that have keyword interactions and can be promoted from like tier 1 to tier 2 status conditions, mainly through elemental use of electrical type abilities and ice type abilities. As is always very important, we are still a work in progress. We are still working towards Alpha 2. This excuse me. This demonstration was a little bit different than the ones we've done in the past. This was a little bit more of a kind of test arena type of display. We go through each of the abilities and we talk a little bit about them, but it's not going to be kind of a run through of a location or an area or POI. Really, we're spawning some monsters, we're showing the interactions between the abilities, and we are just kind of giving you a combat display. And it's very important that you guys, when watching this, Keenan, who participated in this asked a few questions that I think are very relevant to get kind of feedback on. So keep an ear out for what those questions are and how they pertain, and we'll chat about them after the demonstration. But enjoy these next 40 minutes of an early look at the Alpha 2 Mage update.
All right. See ya when we get back.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream in the world of Vera. I am joined today by three of our absolutely awesome developers. We have with us two regulars and one new face. One of our engineers, obviously our glorious engineers, Keenan. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Thanks for asking.
Welcome, sir. Welcome back. It was just, let's see, last time you were on was for the tank, I believe the tank showcase, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and then we also have, I think, as well from that showcase, one of our senior designers, Mr. Trad. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Hello, everyone. Good to see everyone again.
And then we have a new face with us, one of our senior visual effects artists, Mr. John. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, man. This is fun.
Yeah, this is fun. This is your first time on, right?
Yes, it is.
And you have been doing a lot of work on the visual effects side, and today I know many in our audience have been anticipating this early work in progress look at the Alpha 2 Mage, and we have, I'm sure already the chat is ecstatic looking at the hotbars of abilities that we're going to be looking at today. We're not going to go through all of them, but we are going to go through I believe the electrical spells, some of the utilities, and some of the frost abilities, right, Trat?
That's right. Yeah, we're going to be looking at a bit of an ice lightning mage. This will not be the only elements that you'll see on the mage, but that's what we're going to be focused on today. And just specifically some interactions between those elements and showing off how the elements can be used together to create synergies.
Yes, and I know we've been talking about this obviously for a good amount of time, and the way that kind of the class kits synergize and work together, and you guys saw a little bit of that with the tank demonstration between, I believe two abilities had like a staggered to a knockdown promotion. Is that right, Trent?
That's correct. Yeah, we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into that kind of stuff. You'll see probably 3 or 4 different interactions within this kit, and that's just the start of it.
Cool. Now, we are in the Riverlands, of course, but we are, where are we right now? I think we're at the, this is like a, what is this place called? This is the Hall of Judication, which is, was an Aelan, I guess, prison slash trial location that they kept criminals for court. And we're not going to go inside this location because I think it's filled with some goblins that might be a little bit beyond our pay grade. But outside, I think there are some more friendly flowers, perhaps, that we can also play with, and then maybe some rock monsters. But what I want to do before we start there is I think it would be beneficial for us to first get a kind of a base on what each of these abilities do. I know that was something that a lot of the players really liked seeing before we actually get into some combat interactions. And then later, I'm going to let Trad show off some of the intricate combos when we kind of showcase the broader kit. But one thing I want to tell the audience is that, you know, in our previous showcases, we've tended to kind of showcase a little bit more gameplay-oriented kind of walkthroughs of zones and areas and have elements of different encounter designs and monsters and whatnot. Today, we're going to really focus in on these individual abilities, their mechanics, and what it means for the broader, you know, combat design of our archetypes in Ashes of Creation, and hopefully get some good feedback from the community on this direction. And I know Keenan has some questions that he wants to talk about, and John, I know we're going to talk with him a little bit about kind of the next edge kind of technology that we're utilizing for some of our VFX and how these abilities interact. So before we get started, let's go through these abilities one at a time. what's our first one that we have here? This is something that I think we had in Alpha 1. This was our Blink. Is that right, Trad?
Yep, this is one of the ones that we've brought back. This was definitely, I would say, most of our favorite spells from Alpha 1, so we had to bring it back. Even the visuals were just awesome. So, yeah, anyone who played Alpha 1 should be pretty familiar with that.
You know, I'm going to set my cooldowns to 0 so I can show the abilities over and over again. So this is the Blink ability, and obviously its purpose is to close the gap, to create a gap, to reposition. Talk to me a little bit about the use case of a Blink from the Mage's kit perspective.
I mean, you covered it there. It's a gap opener, gap closer, whatever you want it to be, and you know, we'll showcase some kind of that, or we'll showcase that kind of gameplay and actual action once we get to the encounter section of this this stream. But you'll see that mages will probably prefer to use this spell in different ways based on how you're speccing the mage. So if you are a more ranged-based classic mage, you'll most likely use this to create space to put between you and your opponent. But like a more melee-based mage might actually want to use this to get on their opponent.
Yes, to initiate. Absolutely. That feels like the way I would use it. And then after this, we have a, let me see, before we get into the combat abilities, perhaps we use, actually, let me show the shield. Speaking of a combat mage, if you're in the middle of fighting, talk to me a little bit about the shell.
Yeah, this is a pretty classic mage spell that you've probably seen before. It's just a big health shield. It absorbs a bunch of damage, and it has a duration, so usually you want to time it with when you're going to anticipate taking a bunch of damage at once, and we'll show that off too in a little bit with some of our rotations that put the mage in a little bit more danger for greater payoff.
And this is kind of a short duration shell. Now, obviously, duration excuse me, can be one of the parameters that are augmented by some of our augment abilities, so it could be potentially extended by an augment in the future, but it's essentially short duration for those temporary hit points. Is that right? Kind of like if you're stuck in a little bit of a bind.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the point of the duration. Like usually these health shields can be pretty strong, and so timing that is part of the balance and also part of the gameplay skill that comes into deciding when to use that and when to put it on cooldown.
And then let's show off this ball of lightning. Now, John, you have done a lot of work on the tech side for VFX with regards to how lightning kind of interacts with surfaces from a sticky surface perspective, and just establishing what I think is a really cool even style guide and shape language for this electricity. And talk to us a little bit about what it took to create this.
I think one of the things that helps set Ashes apart from an effects perspective is that we want our effects to be dynamically generated. We want them to interact with the world. We want them to feel like they are part of the combat. So when we come to wanting to work with something like lightning, we actually want it to seek out different, things in the world and stick to them. We want it to feel like you are actually in control of that lightning, not just plastered on top. So what we've been working on are kind of behavior systems where you model the behavior of the lightning and how it should work. And then, those systems get put into our effects and you get a very consistent, repetitive, not repetitive in like its motion, but how it behaves, result from it.
Yeah, I think it looks great. I love this ability too. And when we get into combat, you guys will see kind of its use case.
I will say this is one of my favorite spells just to use, not only visually, but like for reasons you'll see later, but like it's a zoning tool. It's like a mobile zoning tool. It's great for applying status effects because it's hitting very rapidly. There's lots of different ways you can use this thing to your advantage.
I'm sorry.
This one was so much fun to make.
People aren't supposed to be using. I have cooldowns. I'm sorry. I set my cooldowns to 0, so I'm launching like a whole bunch of them. But I just really love the effects. I think it's so cool.
It was just fun to figure out how to get it to stick to the floor and make it actually kind of walk along,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, we also have a little bit on the frost side. Let's talk about this ability. And this one is a blizzard. Explain a little bit about blizzard, Keenan.
Blizzard is a very complicated spell. I have thought a lot about Blizzard. It rains projectiles down that deal damage, but also does a fairly frequent burst that applies chilled stacks. It also has a little bit of mobility into it, which is something we talked about quite a bit. We felt that it was important to maintain some control over this ability, even though it's very powerful, just to give players that maximal sense of agency as they are destroying the battlefield.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the visuals here as well, John. The decals on the ground with the frost and the impacting ice shards. Now, is this talk to me a little bit about kind of how you create from a visual effects perspective these individual elements and their reusability.
One of the things that's really good about working here is that we are involved very early on, and we can look at the things that are going to be challenging from what design and the engineering team want to build from an effects perspective, and then inform them on those things. And when we want really cool frost zones all over very uneven terrain that they build out like cool displacements in the ground, there's not a button for that. We have to go and work really closely with tech art and figure that stuff out. And then how do you make sure that the particle systems can drive those decals and they can be animated? So being part of that process very early on, working with the concept team to identify what the challenges are going to be, and then really being able to communicate with those teams about how to accomplish it before it hits our desk is really powerful.
Absolutely.
I remember when when you showed me your first iteration, John, and I was like, how does it look when you move? And you were like, what?
Yep. That is definitely one of the things that you are so very good at, Keenan. You take like whatever system we have designed and you find the one thing almost immediately that we didn't account for, and I appreciate you for that, because once we fix it, it looks so good.
Absolutely. It is a very difficult process, kind of, creating these abilities in a way that, obviously answers the call from a design perspective in the kits that we want to create and the interconnectivity between those kits, but also establish what players want to see out of a class fantasy. And the mage is a very near and dear to many people's hearts. I know it is to mine as well. And there's just so much space here to create strong visual languages around the different types of magics and elements that are utilized. It's a very strong part of the Ashes of Creation class kits. So we have another ability called Cone of Cold. Talk to me a little bit, Trad, about Cone of Cold.
Yep, ice spells have a tendency to be complicated. This is another one. So this is a cone spell. I mean, it's pretty simple in that regard. Like, you hit enemies in front of you. You apply what is one of our elemental status effects called Chilled. Does as you would probably expect. It slows the target, and it can stack for an increasing amount of slow per stack you put on them. But if you might notice that there are some little crystals that it leaves on the ground there, and each one of those is a proximity ice mine that if someone steps on, it will explode and apply additional stacks and damage. So it's really good at creating area denial between your opponent and yourself, and if you force them through it, then you can count on being able to escalate your stats effects a little quicker.
Now, I've aggroed this monster. You guys will notice that it's not pathing towards me, but that's because I want to show off some additional abilities excuse me, that require a target. So, Lightning Strike. Talk to me about what Lightning Strike does.
Sure. This one's a little more straightforward. It's kind of one of your bread and butter single target abilities. You can charge it for varying degrees of efficacy. So you can either release it really soon to apply stacks quickly of the electrified status effect in the lightning category, or you can charge it up longer and do more damage. So I guess I'll take this opportunity to talk a little bit about what you might be noticing on the icons on these enemies. But once you build 10 stacks of electrified on the target, you'll notice that they'll get another icon on them, and that is the shocked status effect. And what that means is that when you hit them with damage, once that thing is applied, it will consume electrified stacks with each hit you do to them while that's active to do or proc additional damage.
So I'll show that here. You can see that electrified gets applied. But one thing also that is interesting is this elemental empowerment. Talk to me a little bit about elemental empowerment.
Yep, so you might be wondering, well, how am I going to get all the way to the number of status effects I need if my abilities are on cooldown and, I need 10 of them to get there? Well, the wand combo is, your weapon combo in general on the mage is very good at doing so because it will take the elements of the last spell you cast and for about a 5-second period or so apply that element in status effect applications to the enemy as you're attacking them. So you might see that happening here.
So let's show off a little bit of that of that interaction after I kill this guy real quick in the next one, and how promotions work on those types of status conditions. So what's a good promotion effect that I can do between electricity and frost right now?
Usually I like to stick with frost first. So I'll open with, do we want to show frostbolt?
Yeah, we can show
let's
frostbolt.
do that. So this is a single target projectile attack that applies 2 stacks of chill to the enemy. And then after that, hit him with a few wand attacks. Now you'll see that you've gotten a frozen status effect on him. And then he timed that really well right there. But like in that very last frame, you'll see that he hit him with a lightning effect, which triggers the Shadis. It's not even a condition, it's just a reaction. And that just triggers a bunch of damage. So that's a good way to get your burst damage if you're rotating your spells and your elements the correct way.
Yeah, that's super cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that particular interaction is by far my favorite thing about this mage.
Yeah, I like the the ability for a spellcaster or just any player with their archetype, having the option to kind of weave in between those rotations and those spells, and to create successful combinations within their kit that you amplify the DPS or the status conditions or the control effects or whatever it is your end goal. Having a rotation that emphasizes your ability to succeed or fail in those combos, I think is compelling from a gameplay perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Like, they really are intended to be rotational drivers and help you get introduced to a kit that, might otherwise feel like just a disparate set of spells that don't really belong together. This is just one way that we're really making them feel connected, and it's not the only way. You'll see some other synergies that are a little bit more organic with a few of these other spells that we have yet to get to, but that's kind of the crux of how we're getting those rotational elements down.
Now
I
talk
think
to
your ball
me.
lightning
Oh, yeah,
just
go ahead.
shattered that for you.
I know. I timed it so that it would essentially hit the target while the frost application applied. I used another ability called Chain Lightning. Talk to me about Chain Lightning.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to Lightning Strike, except it's more of an AoE role that it's filling. So you won't see it here because you're only attacking one target, but if there were multiple targets, you would see lightning branch off from the main target that you have to nearby additional targets. So it's really good at applying its status effect in a more AoE scenario, which we will also show you soon.
Let me see if I can... sorry, I spawned a few more targets just to demonstrate that. Let me sleep them all. Talk to me a little bit about sleep.
Yeah, so this is an AoE CC that breaks on damage. It's great for like creating space and setting up a window, but you can't just like DPS them down while they're sitting there weak. So it's kind of it's a trade-off. It's very good, especially if you're in a more organized group that knows to hold off and like kind of control the battlefield without just throwing damage everywhere.
Yeah, that is super cool. But now, John, talk to me a little bit about the ability for this lightning to kind of connect with these different points of collision.
So, first, working with this combat team so early makes things like the idea that they want to be super twitchy and, you know, rotate the player while they're casting it very obvious from the start as a, you know, a huge challenge. So when we go about designing these systems, we're looking for not only does it look good, but is it performant? And, you know, building out the systems that can look for all of the players, the ground, collision objects like trees or rocks, and not only like collide them, but avoid them, is just super satisfying.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's one of the cool things, you know, you were talking about like looking for that collision, and one thing I want to demonstrate on that comment is, let me see if I can find a good spot to showcase that here. Hold on one second. Let me just spawn a little dude maybe right here-ish. And then, oh, actually, no, wait. We got a friend. Let's use him. Shit asleep right there. Okay, and then let me get behind this rock. Oops, sorry guys. I'll launch around this area here. Oh, that looked so good. Did you guys see that
cool.
arc? That was so cool.
All hacks.
Talk
And
to
you
us
can
about
rotate
that,
while
John.
you're casting. So we wanted to really pay attention to that player agency that's been so important for the combat team. You know, if you're able to move and rotate and get out of the way, and your effects suddenly disconnect from you or don't feel like you're in control of them anymore, it doesn't look right. And we really want it to look and feel interactive and fun. You know, we don't want you to turn the effects off. We want you to enjoy it.
Yes.
I'm definitely not used to seeing such like grounded lightning in games and MMOs especially. No pun
I
intended.
am a mage player, and bad lightning angers me. So it was just not allowed. Like, we had to do better. And it's still very much a work in progress, but we are definitely on the right path, and it's performant. And, you know, I think another aspect of this that's really cool is you're looking at it as lightning right now, but the same system that does lightning does the ice crystals, does the airstrike roots. There's all kinds of different behaviors that these very performant systems can handle.
Absolutely. All right, next up we have Arcane Volley. What is Arcane Volley?
This is a single target arcane spell. Unlike the other ones we've shown you, this doesn't have any particular element associated with it. And it might look a little underwhelming at first, but you can use this pretty quickly. It's on a 2-charge cooldown, and there is a particular synergy that we all like to use with it. If you haven't figured it out, it's how it synergizes with the shocked status effect. The shocked status basically says with each hit, it triggers additional damage, and Arcane Volley is a perfect candidate for that synergy.
You know, let me just make sure this guy's wings are good to go. Trad, I would love for you and I to perhaps swap places here, and for you to walk us through some of these more elaborate combinations. One thing that is really cool, guys, I don't know, it was about a year ago or so, we showed off this particular Thunderbolt gliding mount, and we put a little bit more work. Jason's been putting a little bit more work into the glide mechanic, and let's see if I can set myself up. I want to fly you over to a little location, Trad, where you can demonstrate some of these combos. So I think there's a plateau that's kind of near here. Let's see if we can do this. Oh god, and we're doing it. Okay, so this is kind of the gliding distance that you can develop a little bit with these gliding mounts. So there's some good amount of distance traveled, I think. Oh my god, I pulled a little bit too many troops. Hold on.
You're getting more.
Yeah. Wait. Let me fly back out.
Reset.
Let me reset. All right, wait. We're good. Let's just walk over. Actually, no. I'm gonna fly to a little safer spot in the corner here. There we go. Oh, and he's T-posing. Don't mind him. He's good. Just tell him to go away. Up, and we got another one. And he died. Okay, we're good. Alright. Brad, let me just, hold on. My god, I hope I don't die. Alright, get ready. We're gonna swap over here. Why are there so many creeps on this hill? Oh, no. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Give me 1 second. Let me just see if I can reset them. Okay, there we go. We're good. We're good. Just, they reset? They reset. Nope, they're trying to path to me. They're very angry. Very angry. Oh. Why won't they leash?
They have a super long leash radius.
Okay. Trad, let's you and I swap. What do you think? You want to swap? And we'll do this over here.
Yeah, good luck, Trad.
Hopefully
Yeah, you
they
set him
will
up for
reset.
success here.
Yes.
All
Just
right.
a big AoE pull.
All right, we're gonna swap. Give me 1 second. And we are now swapped, or we're swapping. Sorry, Trad, come on over. And show us some of the magic in the combos.
All right, we are back. I'm gonna do my best to salvage this situation here. Got a big pull. Alright, so first I'm going to thin out this encounter a little bit. I'm going to demonstrate one of the more single
I just want you to know, Trad, real quick, that prior to you thinning out the herd there, that if it wasn't for my training all of those creeps, you would not have had this a spectacular opportunity to just showcase the sheer AoE potential in this kit.
Oh, I see. We're skipping straight to that then. Alright.
And he can do it without the cooldowns too.
No pressure whatsoever. Alright, no, let's set
Yeah,
our
you
cooldowns back
should turn
too.
your cooldowns back
Yeah.
on, yeah.
He can do it.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, doing it live. Let's see. First,
So walk us through kind of what you're going to use.
so because this is going to be more of an AoE combo, I would say one of the better rotations for this is almost one of the more battle mage-like rotations. So that this is going to be something you could almost expect from like maybe Mage Fighter or something like that. You know, I'm going to equip the Great Blade. So this is just to show that, you know, mages use non-conventional weapons in Ashes of Creation. We're going to show that off soon, especially with what we showed you earlier, the Elemental Empowerment spell. This will actually apply to all things that you hit in your cleaving radius with the Greatsword. So here we go.
No, Trad. Oh, God.
I canceled my blizzard.
That was a rip.
Oh, that's so good.
Too many mobs, dude.
No, we're good. We're
All
good.
right,
We're
maybe
good. My
they'll-
bad.
Maybe they'll reset.
Now you're reset. You're good. Okay, guys, I just had to set Trad up to die like that. I apologize. I just wanted to just showcase that the mage is not a literal god, like in many games. That if you overpull and you bite off more than you can chew, you're still gonna die.
I love it. We can't ever get it the first try, right? That would be a boring MMO.
No, that would be very boring. There's a little bit of a, little bit of a difficulty challenge here. Oh, you almost made it back. This is nice. Not bad. Kind of like a little puzzle to get back in here.
He did it pretty quick too. I get lost.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can get a little bit of a better setup here. All right, I'm gonna shelf the AOE one and go to the single target one, and then we'll do the AOE
All right,
one
sounds
again
good.
after that. All right. So this is a little easier one. Here we go.
You're gonna need your wand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, some big deeps there. And that's because of the shattered. Oh,
and you slept the next one. Nice. I love that ball. Oh, you're making quick work of these, Trad. Not bad.
Yep. So that's the single target rotation I like a lot, at least with this kit. Once you start introducing some of these other elements in here that we're not going to show you this time, but you'll get to see them eventually, it really opens like a whole realm of possibilities. Actually, we could even try it on this one. This guy's got a lot of health.
This guy takes a few rotations to bring down.
Yeah, I've been really practiced on this one. Let's see how it goes.
And now, Keenan, talk to us a little bit about kind of the process that goes into creating these, class kits for Alpha 2. Your strike team has been hard at work and kind of developing phase 1 and phase 2 of these. What exactly goes into those phases?
Well, it's pretty much a 3-phase process. Phase 1 is very open-ended. We pretty much try everything under the sun, and we put it together in every way we can imagine, and we try to figure out what we like and don't like and iterate fast. Like we usually do playables like twice a week when we're in that phase. What you guys are seeing here is actually abilities that are in the process of passing phase 2. So they are approaching levels where we are happy with how they play, happy with how they look, and some details may change over time, but generally speaking, this is what we're going for. And from here, it would mostly just be like polish and assets and just getting like external feedback and stuff like that.
Very nice. Trad, I liked your use of slumber there. You're in a precarious spot. Oh god. Oh my god, Trad, I am literally on the edge of my seat just watching this, hoping you don't turn into ash. Oh god. Trad! Ow. Oh my gosh, that was crazy.
Butt shell.
I wanted to make it look close, it's good for the audience.
Uh-huh, yeah. Yep, me too. That's when I die, it's because it's,
Yeah, I mean, it's a dramatic effect.
Yeah, agreed, totally.
Alright, should we set our health back up, or do we have to wait for regen here? Do it the
you
classic
can
way?
set it.
Alright.
You can negative nuke yourself.
Dude, the aggro range on these things. I see why you aggro everything so often.
Do you see what I mean? This is what I'm having to deal with right now. That's well done. You see this, audience? Utilize elements of the terrain to obstruct the pathing from the monster while we have yet to stand up the right pathing to deal with that. Oh, it's so good. This guy's a little boy, though. He's not too bad. This is just more of like the single rotation kit.
Yep.
And you do not have to build your mage down this elemental path, right? That's one of the design elements of this kit, is that there are a lot of different paths that you're able to take the mage down, not just the lightning and ice path or elementals. Talk to us a little bit about kind of the composition of abilities that are intended between utility, defensive, gap closers, and mobility, DPS oriented ones.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we've been demonstrating a little bit with some of these other ones. Like this shell has definitely saved me more than a few times. Slumber as well. Like a lot of defensive utility goes into the mage being able to sustain themselves, when they're having situations like this where, detected by mobs and they weren't quite prepared for it. And I think that's really what rounds out the kit for classes like this. It's not all about just dishing out DPS all the time. It really comes down to those like situational things and using those things intelligently to come out on top.
Nice.
Let's see if we can get an AoE encounter here.
By the way, if you want to turn around, Trad, you're able to you can do like 1, 2, and 3, just kind of in the middle, just face directly into that dirt area there, and just numpad 1, 2, 3, and it'll spawn just right in front of you. And just turn slightly. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
All right, classic AoE encounter here. Let's go.
And guys, just to give you context here, as Trad's doing this, again, we were taking a little bit of a direction here with this showcase. We wanted to kind of give you just how we do things from a combat arena perspective and development perspective, and how we iterate, as Keenan was talking about. There are multiple iterations that occur during phase 1 development, twice a week almost with that strike team. And they use arenas that are a little bit lower weight than the than the Ashes of Creation world, and that's kind of the combat arena that has things like dummies and just a lot of different design-oriented test subjects that are helpful. One of those is just spawning monsters as you need it.
Yeah, one of our guiding theories is that the more iterations we can execute on, the better the game will be. So we're all about minimizing that time to iteration.
Yeah.
That's something that's also really important for us. When you guys are iterating so quickly, we want to make sure that the systems that are using that animation to really drive the effects don't break every 4 days because you guys decided to change it up. We really want to only address changes for, major differences in how the ability functions. So these systems are pretty robust.
Yeah. And I noticed there, Trad, when you were swinging with your greatsword, you had that elemental, is it elemental empowerment?
Elemental empowerment. Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Like, it's not just the wand that interacts with these different abilities. Different weapons have different synergies with class abilities, which just it introduces that extra level of depth, right? It's like, how can I maximize the effect of this? And it's like I'm trading, in this case, my ranged potential for the ability to apply these status effects in a more AoE regard, which makes the greatsword a lot better for dealing with packs than the wand. And sometimes you'll even be able to use either one based on the situation, right? We'll allow players to swap their weapons based on what they are coming up against, and it creates a lot of answers to different situations if you have the tools for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to be clear, the greatsword was dealing so much damage there because they were shocked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good AoE weapon, but by itself, it's not that good. It was really the shock that was making it deal so much damage.
Yeah.
Well, oh, you got another little friend there. You can probably press 4 a couple times. You want to grab a couple more of those. Oh, yeah, grab those.
I think we'll just put him to sleep.
Good call. Well, guys, as always, this is a continued work in progress. Alpha 2, as you know, is a big test period for us. A lot of the archetypes are going to be online to a significant level with a significant amount of abilities that are going to be available to kind of test. And as part of our monthly showcases where we show you development in progress, this is our opportunity to collect feedback on what you guys have seen. Keenan, do you have some questions that are most relevant for your teams with regards to the iteration and development of this combat that you'd like to posit to the community?
Yeah, I would say there's 3 major things that I'm interested in gathering feedback on, and the first one stems from player agency, which is one of the things that we prioritize the most. And so, in the context of this kit, what that looks like is how people feel about the amount of mobility that it has during spells. People may have noticed that the cleric was walking out of its spells and canceling them, but this mage can actually continue to cast. They just have a slower movement speed. How do people feel about that? How does it look? The second thing I'm interested in is how the transition between spells is coming across. Does it look good? Does it look clunky? How do people feel about that? And then finally, the complexity of the kit. Are people pretty happy with these elemental interactions and how they would think about them during combat, or are they interested in something more complicated or less complicated?
Awesome. And guys, as always, remember this is a work in progress. There is still iteration necessary. There's a lot of artwork that's still outstanding and requires second, third, fourth passes and polish. But we are showing you, everything as it is in development because we find that it's a very important interaction with the community to collect this type of feedback and get your guys' thoughts on the direction that we're taking. Because at the end of the day, when we launch Ashes of Creation, we want to make sure that we've had as much touch point with the community as possible so people don't go, what game is this? But with that being said, John, Trad, Keenan, I want to thank all 3 of you for joining me today and showcasing the hard work that you and the rest of the team have been putting towards developing this mage and the other archetypes. I know I speak for the community when I say thank you. You guys are doing an awesome job. Very excited to see this played by players in Alpha 2. And with that being said, we will see you all back on stream. Bye, guys.
Welcome back. We'll play the video in the background. It seems like most people enjoyed the showcase. Ooh, you're muted for me? I don't hear you.
Whoops, my bad.
You're okay.
Okay, I'm good now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like everyone enjoyed that. So, just to give you guys again further context there, this was just showcasing the lightning and ice interactions on the abilities. As you guys know that there is a pipeline behind ability creation. There's still outstanding artwork on the visual effects side for the fire and earth spells that we're kind of working on. We talked a little bit about in that showcase kind of our phases of development for our different archetype classes. And there are phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And these were ready to kind of showcase, and we wanted to get your guys' feedback on that. So look
They were
forward
just
to
disappointed in the fire, Stephen. They
I
wanted fire. They want to
know,
see it burn. You'll see
fire is
fire in
such
the
a
future. Stay tuned.
absolutely. We
But
don't
with
want to show everything too, by the way. We
yeah,
want people to experience and play this as well. So
we do have quite a few questions, so I'm going to try to power through some of these.
yeah,
One of the things was, can we swap weapons in the middle of combat? We saw that Trad did
yeah.
that with the great sword or great blade versus the wand.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit in the past, and this was present in Alpha 1 as well for those of you who played and those of you who watched. You may not swap armor when you're in combat, but you may swap your weapons. And, there's obviously a few reasons of why this can be important. We're a itemization agnostic class design. So players kind of equip with items that are most necessary based on the adversary or the challenge that they're facing. And so we want that to be available for players to kind of swap with weapons.
All right. And then there's a question regarding ball lightning. Does this charge? What's it like when it's not charged up versus charging it all the way up?
So ball lightning you cannot charge up. It's the arc lightning that you can charge up, and that charge up is essentially additional time that's spent as a risk in exchange for additional DPS when the execution occurs.
All right. And then there are folks wondering, is there an underlying system for the skills in combat from the UE gameplay ability system, or is this a proprietary solution that we've created?
Yeah, this is our custom ability system that's been created at Intrepid. Adam and Keenan and Mike have had a significant hand in creating that. There is functionality that we need to occur in our ability system that's not capable of being done through what's natively available through Unreal Engine. And so as a result, many of our systems that we utilize in Ashes of Creations are made custom in-house in order to better facilitate our needs.
And then folks were wondering about foliage, as it seems like it could hide your character from your own camera. Can it do something like turn transparent to you so you could lose your own character?
Yeah,
So you don't
those
lose yourself in the grass.
absolutely. Those are kind of little higher fidelity types of polish that we get around to when we're
We're
out of
still
the
alpha,
guts of building, core systems and abilities and archetypes. So, part of watching our game in development is understanding that a lot of the quality of life or polish oriented features that you would typically see in a launched game are not yet worked on from our perspective. We're very much still on the core aspects of our feature development and on our archetype and class designs.
And then the next one here, and I knew this was going to come up, which is action versus tab basic attacks when using the wand. How does it work? And just, I guess, in general, everyone was saying that this looks more tab targeted versus like hybrid. So they're wondering,
Yeah.
what's our
Yeah,
plan
it's
with that? And
it's
what is the
important.
difference?
It's important to note that when we talk about Ashes of Creation's hybrid combat designs, you have abilities that are skill shot oriented abilities. The Cone of Cold, the Blizzard PB AoE, the placed template AoEs, the directional line attacks that are not predicated on a target. And then we also have a mixture of abilities that require targets. We have two alternate modes of camera settings. We have the action reticle based camera setting, which utilizes a soft lock featuring mechanic that that allows the player to utilize their tab targeted oriented abilities, but then also gives them an additional fidelity from an action camera perspective when they're utilizing positional based or directional based template type attacks as well. So our desire has always and continues to be how we can create a mixture of tab target abilities and skill shot oriented positional directional based ability usage and make something cohesive in that design. And I think that what we're achieving with that regard may not fully feel action oriented, may not feel like an action oriented game, but we've always intended to be more hybrid oriented, leaning towards tab target. So you're going to see a mixture of abilities that require the targets and that don't, and then you're going to have an option as the player's perspective to utilize an action camera mode, which utilizes a soft target lock feature and our reticle.
All right. And then folks are wondering, can I be
And
a
then
fire?
real
Oh, go
quick,
ahead.
sorry, just to touch on the basic attack comment there.
Mhm.
So when you have your weapon and you utilize a basic attack, you can blind fire that weapon if it has a projectile associated with it without having to have a target. In addition, if your reticle in action camera mode is over a target, you will have a soft target lock and projectiles will home to that target if within the right angle of direction, just to answer specifically the question about basic attacks.
Yeah, and to verify, or to clarify, when he's talking about ground target AoEs being like skill shots, a lot of them are, I don't know if you've played, a lot of people have played a variety of games, but a lot of the times you can place something and then it goes in that spot. So you have to, there are abilities that are like that where you have to place them and if creatures move, then, so there is some skill element to it. It's less
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
having to fire at the right target, but it's trying to predict where the targets are going to be to some extent.
Yeah.
If they're not moving, that makes it easy, I suppose. So you have to pick the order in which you're putting them in. And then the follow-up question to this is, can I be a fire mage only, or a frost mage only, or a lightning mage only, or will I always have to have some combination of these elements?
So within the elements themselves, there are combos that can be leveraged. For example, you were seeing there in the Ice Bolt and the example of the Elemental Empowerment on the Wand ability. When the Elemental Empowerment assumes for your wand attacks the last used element for a number of seconds after that spell was used. So in this example, I use a Frost Bolt, which is an ice element, and that applies stacks of chill to the target, right? And now chill has the ability when additional stacks of chill from another source are applied to promote into a frozen state. And when a target's frozen, they're susceptible to the shattered effect. And shattered effect can be utilized against a frozen target by an electrical attack. So you saw there, excuse me, you saw there that I ice bolted to apply stacks of chill. I then followed up with my elemental empowered wand attacks that added additional chill stacks, which created the frozen condition on the target. They couldn't move. And then before that frozen condition subsided, I used my arc lightning in order to cause the shattered effect. So there are abilities and ways by which within a particular element you can create those promotions. But obviously when building your class kit, you want to take into consideration what type of intricate connections am I creating with my combos? And then in addition, how does that interact with groups that I'm going to interface with and other classes and archetypes that play off of the keyword interactions from my abilities as well? Because remember, Ashes of Creation is a group-centric, group-focused game, which means that when you take into account all of these different types of tier status conditions, you need to take them with the grain of salt that it has to interact with the party you're accustomed to playing with. And so there's some synergy that needs to be kind of planned out there.
The Twitch server is having problems. I just did a speed test, and on my end, I'm getting 20 up, but I think on the Twitch server side, there's some weird stuff going on.
Oh no.
So there might have been a little bit of weirdness going on with the live stream. So we apologize for that, everybody. But the video will have the deeds that Stephen mentioned if you want to rewatch that. And then the next question here is, how will line of sight work with abilities in PvP? It's cleared up now, Stephen.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I was just checking. How will say? Sorry, what was that last question?
How will line of sight work with PvP abilities? Or like
So
abilities in PvP?
one of the things we're looking into, and you saw a little bit of this with the visual effects tech that was used around chain lightning, is the ability to have projectiles path around corners. And the reason for that, and the reason why I think that's interesting, and we're going to explore that, is that some abilities might have indirect fire. So if you have, let's say, a archer or ranger who has the ability to select a mage as their secondary class, and they might want to augment a snipe ability in order to, go around a corner like an arcane archer might have, right? Those interesting types of interactions, I think, play with the problem statement that sometimes we've had in gaming and combat, where you can play around a corner and try to block line of sight and play with that line of sight. Well, some abilities might not care about that line of sight. They might care the distance to the target around the corner or the path that it's taking. And if it's outside, that path is too long, it might not be able to reach them, of course. But if you're playing kitty corner with a player who's on the opposite end of you, you might need to look out for some abilities that are able to path to you. That, I think, is something that's interesting, and I haven't seen used very much in general combat mechanics for MMOs.
And just to go back to the previous question to more clarify, in regards to, like, if I want to only be a fire mage, could I only be a fire mage? We get that there's combos and things like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If you wanted to only, so let me ask that. If you wanted to only focus on one particular element, this might reduce your horizontal application in the design of combat. However, within one element, there are plenty of options and synergies and combos that will still make you relevant.
All right, cool. Just clarifying. And then at higher levels, how much will mana management matter to mage players? We didn't see a lot of that happening here. But we're curious. I know that we're not at the balance level of combat in regards to mana, but for folks who are curious, what is the mana management going to look like for mage players?
Well, mana management, I think, not just for mage players, but for really every class, is a relevant resource mechanic that they have to take into consideration when they're utilizing their rotations. And there are going to be abilities that will, sap your mana faster than others, and they're going to be situational. Now, with that blanket statement of mana is always relevant, there is also going to be mechanics and or class synergies and abilities that you can spec into to help mitigate that. There's itemization that you can utilize from a set bonus perspective, or certain types of weapons and tattoos that you can acquire. There are certain enchantments that you can acquire that might reduce the cost of mana use, that might increase your mana regeneration, that might increase your mana total pool. There are even specs that you can build towards if mana management is your issue, right? So we want to make it a compelling case that you need to think about mana use, because you don't just want to go 100% all the time with no downside to that. That's a very boring type of interaction.
All right. And then we know we have a lot of new folks, and we've answered this question before, but in large-scale PvP situations with a lot of players, how are we going to handle particle effects and spell effects so that they're not overwhelming for people?
Yeah, I think, a lot of commentary I saw in the Twitch chat around these particular effects that you're seeing today is a good example of how in the past, especially during Alpha 1, We talked about first passes and how art is always improving and art is always moving forward. Here is an example where now you see some of these abilities are a bit dialed back, and they're now within kind of the scope of what we would consider not too in your face and more amenable to massive types of PvP situations or large amounts of players. But in addition, we'll have certain features from a scalability setting standpoint that will allow players to even further tone down both the bloom and brightness of these types of effects, as also, in addition, some of the elements and channels of those effects as well. But I think you guys will agree with me here that, effects now are as opposed to where they were in Alpha 1, we've taken into account what people's feedback were, although it was always the case we were going to address them, and we've implemented them in such a way where they're more conducive to large player battles.
Yeah, we'll be testing sieges and stuff, so we'll be keeping an eye on all of that. So don't worry, and we'll take a lot of feedback into play. And I think one of the questions that Keenan even asked was like, how are you feeling about the look and the visual quality of the class as well? So we will have a thread up in regards to the Mage Archetype. It probably is already actually up right now. So definitely
And
head on over to the forums and provide us your feedback.
Before we move off that subject real quick, I would like to say that visual effects artists are very hard to come by. They're one of the more difficult talents to acquire within the game industry. And I will say, for those of you who are following our project and who are excited about Ashes of Creation to come to fruition, and you really want those visuals to look strong and good, don't be afraid to become a de facto recruiter for Ashes of Creation by going out there and finding your favorite types of visual effects you've seen in games and messaging those people on a Twitter, on a LinkedIn, and saying, hey, Ashes of Creation is hiring, Intrepid Studios is hiring for visual effects artists, and we want the top tier visual effects artists in this industry because we're building a top tier MMORPG and we need that talent. So our visual effects team is growing along with a lot of teams at Intrepid Studios, and you guys can be part of helping us acquire that talent by helping evangelize for Ashes of Creation out in those communities.
Yeah, and our wonderful social media manager, Peter, is constantly posting those things. So I think we have something up right now. If you want to go check out our social channels, scroll a little bit, you'll find our promotion for our job applications. So definitely send people our way. We're trying our best to get the voices out there, but it always does help whenever there's a little amplification, or if you know people personally, that's always helpful as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we're keeping an eye out. I know that there's been a lot of layoffs, which we extend our hearts to
Oh,
those
yes,
folks who have had to
absolutely.
deal with that. As someone who has been part of that and survived many layoffs, I think like it is definitely not an easy thing to go through on either side, whether you survive it or you are let go. But we are definitely keeping our eye out for good talent, and we see all the messages you guys send us when you're like, hey, check out this person, they just got laid off. So we are reaching out to folks who we feel would be good fits for Intrepid Studios. Yeah. And with that, we'll head on up to our art update, unless you have anything else you would like to touch base on, Stephen, in regards to the mage.
No, I don't think so. Of course, as always, the reason we do these demonstrations and the reasons why we show you our works in progress is to collect feedback and get your guys' thoughts on what you saw today. Keenan gave some great examples of questions and focus areas that we want you to opine on, but feel free, make sure you're jumping on our forums, the Discord, social media channels on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, and giving us your thoughts on what you saw today. What did you like? What did you think could be better? What are examples from other games and other MMOs that you've played that you enjoyed and that we could potentially incorporate?
Yeah, we want to hear it. We want to hear your feedback. All right, moving on to character goodies. Our character artists, well, our artists in general, are just awesome. We've got some skeleton weapons, gonna look a little tarnished, but you've probably seen some of our undead creatures and whatnot, and some of our skellies already, but they're working on some more weapons for them so that you can murder them. Or they can murder you, whichever way it ends up going. As we saw, it can go both ways. And also, we've got the Featherstone Expedition Pack that is now has a 3D model, and we have a little turntable of that as well.
Looks great. Love this. And remember, guys, you know, on the back slot, there's a few different options that you'll have for the player in order to showcase weapon, accessory, cape. This one's a pretty cool accessory.
Yeah, this is cosmetic, a cosmetic one, so it'll go over that whole slot. But there are other ones where you can swap out like the little pieces and details, which will be really cool. And then we've got the Ward of the Implacable. Now it has a 3D model as well. Looking awesome. I know some people didn't necessarily like the feathers on this one, but I think it looks cool.
What?
I
I love the colors. I love the materials. I think that they did a great job with this set, and the faction and game that this represents from the NPC perspective, I think, is super cool. Yeah, this is a great set.
It will definitely help us with in-game stuff. And then we've got the Godsinger garb. And we'll wrap things up and move on with our cows. Sorry.
Oh, the
I'm
cows.
I know.
Cows?
Jinsey did such a good job with the cows. And I told her, I was like, we need Highland cows. You know, those like long, fluffy cows. And she was like, oh.
Yes.
But she was directed to
I
make
think,
some more
is
regular
this-
cows.
Yeah, is this one of the first kind of farm animal stuffs that we've seen?
No,
I
we've
think.
had the little ducks, but yeah,
Oh,
this
that's
is kind of
true,
the
yeah.
first of the
Like livestock that
ones.
is available for people to kind
What's
of
funny-
utilize animal husbandry with on their freeholds and whatnot. Yeah.
What's funny is it's just a cow, and normally like we are so weird with our stuff, so I'm sure you're gonna see some weird deformities of cows in the future. Don't worry, guys. We've had some like more bull-esque looking creatures as well in the past. And then I think I have a turntable of that. Yeah, here we go. Or we need the longhorn ones with the big long horns. I was tempted, for those of you who are old fans of like EverQuest, I was tempted to get Catkins to do a little scene with us. And if Catkins is watching this right now, he'll know what I'm talking about. But we had like a whole cow thing in one of our old companies.
Cow thing.
Yeah, I'll have to send it to you, Steven, and you'll be like,
I think I
okay.
saw it.
Okay, you think you saw it? It's pretty funny. I was like, oh, we should have done a little thing, but maybe we will with future cows. And then last minute, Jinsey was like, I finished the sheep too. I want to show them. And so,
Oh, I
look
love
at
the sheep.
them. They're so cool. I love their horns.
Look at the
They're
sheep.
fluffy. Their wool
I
looks
can't
cool.
wait to shear them for some wool.
Yeah, they'll probably make some cool clothes. We need some interesting sheep wooled clothes.
I was thinking, you know, part of like the freehold / animal husbandry design, when you've domesticated animals and you're like processing them for their materials and whatnot, it would be a really cool idea from a narrative perspective if occasionally your property and the things that you've done on that property have an opportunity to spur a random quest where one of the sheep breaks out of the pen and you need to go get the sheep back. And where is that sheep? And what did the sheep get into? I mean, those are great predicates.
I'll let you know, as someone who has grown up around like farm animals, they do escape sometimes. Or
I
like
know.
one of your fence posts will like rot and like fall over, and then they're like, oh, what's over
Absolutely.
here? And then they start walking across the street, and then you're like having to chase them and get them back in. It is it is wild times. But yeah, so that is our character art. We're going to go on to our Q&A actually studio update first. So Stephen, if you want to talk a little bit about what's going on the studio front.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we are finishing up our sprint next week, and we'll be in our hardening week prior to our next sprint. We have had some really successful hires over the course of April. We brought on a principal animator, a lead technical animator, a couple of visual effects artists, some audio programmers and designers. It's been a big month for hires. As you guys know, and as we've been posting, we're stepping up hiring this year again. So a lot of success there. Stacy, Cameron, John, and Midori have been doing a great job on the HR side with facilitating those things. We had our bring your kids to work day. Was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was
It was
yesterday.
yesterday. There's a lot going
Yeah,
on yesterday,
I know.
but that was also happening at the
There
same
was just
time.
a bunch of kids here at the studio, and I saw that there was some really cool like color books of our characters that they were coloring in. That was really
Yeah, I
cool to
think
see those
Brad
characters.
made some of those pieces for them, and so
Yeah, that was awesome. But yeah, things are going really good at the studio. Lots of fun stuff.
yeah. And we have a lot of more things coming up in the future we're excited about, so we can't wait for you guys to see that. And like Steven said, we are hiring, so please send folks our way. We're trying to fill a lot of roles here so that we can continue making lots of good progress is the goal. So that you can have Alpha 2 faster. We know what you guys want. We're working towards it.
Yes.
So moving on to Q&A, I will just play the video again in the background so you have something visually compelling whilst we
We're
talk.
not that visually compelling.
I mean, we're still on the screen. I definitely
I'll speak for myself. I'm not that visually
think you.
compelling.
I mean, I think people would prefer to see the mage over looking at us.
This is true.
The first question here is from BlizzBub over on our forums, and the question is about dungeons to ourselves. How many dungeons will a party of adventurers have to access when they meet up each evening? In other words, will it be intentionally rare to find level appropriate dungeon content that is not already engaged by others? I think the concern here is more that because there's a lot of contested content, will there be enough content for everybody, or will there be cases where
Yeah,
there's so much congestion that like they can't find
I
something to
think
do?
so. To answer the question to begin with, we are purposefully launching with probably one of the most aggressive and ambitious content schedule for an MMO at launch, I think. And but to the second part, so the answer to that is yes, there's going to be a lot of different opportunities of content areas that you can participate in. A lot of that's predicated on how the world gets developed that unlocks those zones. But the second part of that question, Margaret, to I think your point and reading into the purpose of that is when talking about like congestion, is that not all content is equal. Okay. And that's a very important contextual point to this answer. We purposefully create tiers of content areas, and we also create types of content areas. And the tiers might relate to things like better drop rates, better respawn rates, better damage mitigation for your particular group composition, better proximity to certain locations. Those create tiers of areas where content becomes more relevant or more desired, right? On the second flip side of that is there are what you gain from those content areas that might be relevant for certain classes or certain groups more so than others. So yes, you will have access to a lot of different content. Will the best or most relevant content that's to you or your group always be available? No. And that is the element of competition, right? And if things don't feel competitive around what's best, then you have removed an element of the satisfaction when you've acquired / succeeded in participating in that content. And that is a fundamental core pillar behind what Ashes is attempting to achieve through the distribution of content, but also the interaction of players. And I think that's an important concept that we cannot forget about when we think about a question like this.
All right. Next up, that was a long answer. Hopefully, we can get through a few more.
I
Steven,
know,
you
I'm
have to
sorry.
let me know what your cutoff time
yeah,
is.
yeah, I know.
Lithion wants to know about crafting skills. Are there any passive skills in the crafting tree that allow you to drop less material on death?
Not in the crafting tree, but there are in the material inventory bags that you can acquire. In the crafting trees, there are within those professions abilities to augment things like drop rates and gathering speeds and ability to survey, stuff like that, and tool creation, whatnot. But the dropping mechanics really more relate to your bags.
And so there will be different benefits to bags.
Yes, there's
depending on-
there's item progression as it relates to quality of bags, types of bags, and the materials they're most used for. Some of them are more PvP oriented that can reduce significantly drop rates for PvP as a result of that progression. So there's a complexity there.
All right. And Anduin wants to know about character roleplay effects. Player death means XP debt and losing materials. The RP community wants to know, what are the in-game lore repercussions of revival upon death? For example, does my character lose memory? Are they weaker? Does a period of time occur before revival? What happens when our ashes come
That's
back
funny. We had this question yesterday in our PI meeting. And
Steven, what happens in PI stays in PI. No, I'm just
shoot!
kidding.
I hope you don't ban my account.
Just kidding.
No, I was gonna say that I'll kind of give the same answer I gave there. That question touches a little close to the metaphysical nature of the universe and Ashes of Creation. It's a difficult one for me to answer without revealing perhaps too much of that metaphysical nature. What I will say is that there is a spiritual element, obviously, to Ashes of Creation and its universe and story and the lore. There is a spark, there is a mortal coil that the character has, which relates to kind of the interaction of resurrection or revival and how it relates to the goddess of creation, your existence within that universe as a mortal coil. So there is lore there. It's just not what I'm comfortable commenting on prior to the game's launch.
All right. You guys will have to find out. And Azure wants to know about caravans. Does a caravan stop moving or slow down when it's attacked?
There are certain attacks that can slow the caravan, but basic attacks will not slow a caravan, no.
So you can try to trudge through while you're taking damage.
Yeah, they're that's
Keep
correct.
moving,
Yeah.
run.
Well, and to that point, right, caravan speeds are built around character speeds so that the interaction and interval of distance traveled by a caravan versus when players are attacking it is somewhat equitable. But there are certain types of items that you can use that can slow and or block caravans from a collision perspective. There are certain abilities and or status conditions that can get applied to caravans which reduce. There's damage that can be done to components of caravans which reduce speed. There's lots of different ways to affect that.
All right. And then kind of going back to the resurrection stuff, but this is from Nick, and they're wondering about items. Will we have items that let us resurrect other players? We know that there are certain archetypes that will allow that, but will there ever be items that allow it as well?
I'm so sorry. My mind actually went off in a totally different direction. I got stuck on that thought while you were asking the question, and I missed the last half part of it. What was that? What was it again?
Will we have items that let us resurrect other players?
Oh yes, yeah. There will be scrolls of resurrection available. Although is an element of resurrection that's important as it relates to experience debt, and being able to recover portions of that experience debt when utilizing higher grade resurrections that are only available from classes. And then there are lower grade resurrections which can be granted through items like scrolls of resurrection, that allows for parties who may not have access to a resurrection class be able to continue on, but it will be at a deficit.
All right. And then Horrendous wants to know about Tulnar lore. Since we received an immortal soul or spark of life by going through the gateway from Sanctus, how are the Tulnar players able to respawn since they didn't go through the same portal?
Well, so again, not to touch too much on the metaphysical nature here. Tulnar are descendants of the divine races, and the Tulnar sought refuge in an area of Vera that has some element of mystery around how that occurred, which players will need to discover. And there is a connection. The spark exists within the Tulnar as well. And how that spark exists within the Tulnar is something that players will be able to discover as they progress through the storylines in Ashes.
You will learn. This one is about gatherables from Rufian, and they want to know, what are the differences between biome exclusive resources? For example, do different ores give different resistances, etc.?
Yeah, there are associated with specific types of raw gatherables and resources that can be processed into refined materials that grant different elements of benefit and or bonuses or abilities to the different types of itemizations and or recipes that are available. So based on where that element can be found, there might even be relationships that are shared across different materials and or resources in those locations that share some of those characteristics that can be applied to items. So yes, it is specific to the material, and it's even grade potentially that are used.
And then Sen Garden wants to know about gliding mounts, which we kind of showed a little bit today. Will
Mhm.
gliding mounts be momentum based or feature any speed boosting mechanics to make the experience more skill based and interactive?
Yeah, so important thing to note is that all mounts have the ability to acquire up to 4 abilities and skills. Some of those skills will be propulsion based or speed based that can enhance or increase or burst different speeds. Some might be defensive based that would protect the rider and the mount for a short period of time. Some can be offensive. Um, and that's part of what interfaces with the animal husbandry system and the ability to train those mounts in order to unlock the use of those abilities.
I think this is more of when you're gliding, the skill in regards to the player, like the skill of the player gliding the creature. Is it going to be more skill based in that regard and interactive versus I hit a button, I'm now gliding, and I land, type of thing?
Not specifically probably what they're thinking about skill wise, but there is skill associated with it. Where's my launch point? Am I going to, hit this ledge that I'm trying to gauge the depth from my distance and calculate the speed on? When do I use the abilities that I need to use? Do they, am I misusing them at different times? So there is skill there. So I'm not sure exactly, what type of skill they're referring to, if not those.
Okay. And then this one is from Phantom Mex, which they want to know about removing player corruption. We talked about how experience removes corruption, but does gaining crafting experience specifically remove corruption?
Does gaining crafting experience remove corruption? Yes. So any experience that's gained by the player, whether it be through achievements in crafting or in adventuring or through other types of achievements, all of that experience goes towards your adventuring class experience gained. And then some experience can dual purpose towards professions as well. So if I reach an achievement in my crafting profession, and that grants me additional experience within that profession to rank up, it will also grant the same amount of experience over in my adventuring level. And to that point, anytime you gain adventuring experience, you tick away at the corruption.
And our last question is from Hartison, who wants to know about guild meta. And I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. I think that's the first time that one's come up. Will the meta for guilds be to just create alliances of smaller guilds with many skills rather than larger guilds with less skills?
Well, remember, alliances are limited. The number of guilds that can participate in an alliance is a limited number. Also, achieving the ability even to launch an alliance is something that is very late in the guild leveling process. essentially, what we're trying to create is an environment where there's a duality between guilds that try to go towards population and then guilds that choose to forego population in exchange for a deeper access to passive skills that the players have access to. Will the meta be for many smaller guilds to co-locate with each other? Yes, I'm sure that will be utilized by some number of smaller guilds in order to try to combat the numbers that other guilds might have access to. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't
I think the
necessarily know if
question,
that's a meta either, because it's going to be beneficial for larger guilds to be allied with smaller guilds that might have access to those passive abilities that they don't have access to. So what I think the meta will actually be is probably a mixture of large guild and small guilds that exist within the alliances so that they can overcome the types of challenges that occur in objective-based gameplay for events where you need the smaller guild with the passives to overcome the challenge rating, but you also need the numbers from the larger guilds in order to engage with the opponent at the choke points.
I think the question is more that people feel that larger guilds will decide to go with more smaller guilds. Let's say I have a guild of 1,000 people normally. I'll spread that out into a bunch of 100 people guilds in order to get better benefits, I think is what they're trying to aim for, versus because there will be different benefits for small guilds versus larger guilds.
Yeah, I mean, is that what is going to happen? Will the largest guilds segment off into different chapters of their guild that are part of small guilds? Absolutely, that will happen. And the way that we combat the efficacy of doing that always is through how we design our encounters and our events to incorporate the use case of where smaller guilds and their passive abilities are necessary to overcome certain challenge ratings. Will it always be most beneficial for larger guilds to do that? No, not always. It depends on what they're encountering. But you absolutely will see some guilds leveraging that for sure.
Okay. Cool. And that wraps us up for today. Woo, we made it to the end. And it was a long one. So thank you all for hanging in with us. And we hope that you had fun and enjoyed this, as well as getting a little sneak peek of the mage. We know that you want to see fire abilities, so maybe you'll see those in the future. And also, we do want you to experience some of it in Alpha too. So we're not going to share everything all the time on here. But we do have some really fun updates for next month. So we hope that you will join us. We'll let you guys know whenever those things are coming up over on our social channels. Definitely recommend following us in all the places at Ashes of Creation. We're pretty active over there. And then we also want to remind you that we do have our Creative Director Community Q&A that is over on our YouTube channel. If you didn't get to check that out, Stephen took some time he was kind of sick during it, but he did power through and answered a lot of great questions from our community members, Chibi Bree, Richie, SH, and Simurg. So definitely check those out. And of course, head on over to our forums. We want your feedback. There's already a thread, forums.ashesofcreation.com, in regards to the Mage Archetype. So definitely head over there. Answer those questions that Keenan had, because they're going to be making some changes as we move forward, especially before everyone gets to see it in Alpha 2. And reminder that our cosmetic swap over is on May 10th at 11 a.m., so snag those. And of course, we just want to thank you again for joining us. Thank you to John, Keenan, and Trad for being part of this stream, as well as Stephen. Appreciate your time. We know you're busy. And we hope that you all had a really great time here. And we hope that you go for another month and are able to return to us with another fun stream. The VOD will be up here on Twitch. We'll also have it over on YouTube. We'll have the 4K version of the Mage content as well. And then this video will go out on Saturday with the full Q&A and everything. And of course, on the dev update, make sure you leave us a comment, subscribe to our channel, and make sure your subscriptions are live so that we can see them and you could potentially be spotlighted in our next one. And with that, we will see you all next month for another update.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.
See ya.